The birth of a maverick's creation. In early March 1943, at Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, Captain Paul Irvin "Pappy" Gunn stared at an aircraft that defied every regulation of the United States Army Air Forces. Before him stood a B-25 Mitchell bomber whose glass nose had been replaced by 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns. The bomber, originally designed for medium-altitude precision attacks, had been transformed into something entirely different, a fast, brutal, low-flying ship killer. What Gunn had done was completely unauthorized and could have ended his career with a court-martial. Instead, it would alter the course of the Pacific War and help produce the worst naval disaster the Japanese would suffer in the entire conflict. Gunn's path to this moment had begun much earlier, on December 8, 1941, just one day after Pearl Harbor, when Japanese bombers decimated American airfields across the Philippines. At the time, Gunn was not even a soldier. He was managing Philippine Airlines and had 4 Beech-18 aircraft at his disposal. But within hours, those planes were seized by Major General Louis Brereton, and Gunn found himself commissioned as a captain in the rapidly collapsing American air defenses. A personal war begins. Paul Gunn was 42 at the time, older than most combat aviators, and already a seasoned pilot and mechanic. He'd served 20 years as a naval aviator and aircraft technician. Flying, repairing, and improvising solutions was second nature to him. But none of that mattered when Japanese forces swept over the Philippines. What mattered most was his family. His wife Clara Louise, or Polly, and their 4 children were still in Manila as Japanese troops advanced. Gunn flew dangerous transport and reconnaissance missions, dodging enemy fighters, getting shot down, and escaping through jungle terrain. But he never reached his family. When ordered to evacuate to Australia on Christmas Eve 1941, he had no choice but to obey. Weeks later, he learned that Polly and the children had been captured and interned at Santo Tomas University in Manila. Something inside him hardened. Gunn's war became personal. If he couldn't rescue his family directly, he would fight by destroying every Japanese ship that kept their captors supplied. His fury would fuel his inventions. In mid-1942, General George C. Kenney arrived to take command of the Allied Air Forces in the Southwest Pacific. What he found was disastrous. His predecessor had been removed, morale was low, aircraft were in poor condition, and Japanese forces dominated the skies. MacArthur himself had little faith in his airmen. Kenney immediately asked MacArthur for the authority to purge ineffective officers. Granted the freedom he wanted, he reorganized command, promoted aggressive combat leaders, and pushed for rapid innovation. But the key problem remained unsolved. Allied bombs were simply not sinking Japanese ships. High-altitude bombers like the B-17 hit less than 1% of their targets. Japan was resupplying its New Guinea garrisons without serious interference, costing Allied soldiers their lives. Kenney had long believed in a solution: skip bombing, a low-altitude method that sent bombs skipping across the water like skipping stones to punch into ships below the waterline. Yet implementing the tactic required aircraft capable of suppressing enemy deck guns at extremely close range. That was the missing piece. Then he learned about a rogue captain who had already begun solving the problem on his own. Gunn's genius unleashed. In August 1942, Kenney discovered that someone in the 3rd Attack Group was modifying A-20 Havoc light bombers with unauthorized forward-firing guns. Instead of punishing the offender, Kenney immediately placed Gunn on his personal staff as Special Projects Officer and gave him one directive: modify every plane possible for low-level attack, starting with the A-20. Gunn worked tirelessly, often 18 hours a day, cannibalizing guns from wrecked fighters, hand-fabricating mounts, and test-flying each modified aircraft himself. His Strafer A-20s, armed with multiple forward-firing .50 caliber guns, proved devastating in their first combat mission, shredding Japanese airfields at Buna in seconds. Encouraged by success, Kenney ordered Gunn to attempt a similar transformation on the B-25 Mitchell medium bomber. Larger, more durable, and with greater range than the A-20, the B-25 could carry far more firepower and far more explosives. Working with North American Aviation representative Jack Fox, Gunn ripped out the nose of the bomber and replaced it with a solid metal structure housing 4 .50 caliber guns. Then he added 2 guns in cheek mounts. Then he locked the dorsal turret to fire forward. Suddenly, the aircraft carried 8 heavy machine guns, delivering an unmatched hail of fire, more than a fighter squadron could muster. The modifications created enormous engineering challenges: center of gravity shifts, recoil stress, overheating, and ammunition storage issues. Gunn solved them all by reinforcing structures, adding ventilation, ballasting the tail, and developing precise harmonization techniques to align the gun's aim. His mechanics worked in improvised shops, turning out modified B-25s in as little as 2 weeks each. New tactics for a new weapon. With a fleet of modified B-25s ready, Kenney selected Major Ed Larner, an aggressive and daring pilot, to command the first squadron of medium-altitude bombers converted into low-level strafers. Together, Larner and Gunn developed tactics that weaponized speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower. B-25 Strafers would roar in at speeds up to 300 miles per hour, sometimes flying so low their propellers sliced sea spray. At about 1,000 yards, the pilot opened fire with all 8 forward guns, sweeping Japanese decks and silencing anti-aircraft weapons. Then, at just a few hundred yards, the pilot released bombs fitted with delayed fuses. These bombs skipped off the water like stones, smashed into the ship's hull at or below the waterline, and detonated underwater, causing catastrophic structural shock. The technique was brutally effective. A single pass could cripple or sink a vessel, and the bomber, already speeding away, was gone before the explosion erupted behind it. The stage is set. The Japanese gamble everything. While Gunn worked, Allied intelligence broke Japanese naval codes. In February 1943, radio intercepts revealed that Japan was preparing a major convoy to reinforce its troops in New Guinea. 8 transports, escorted by 8 destroyers, were preparing to sail from Rabaul to Leh, carrying nearly 7,000 soldiers of the 51st Division, veterans whose arrival could halt Allied progress in the region. For Japan, this was a decisive gamble. For the Allies, it was the